Hey everyone, it's Jen.
And this is Lindsay.
And welcome back to Corpus Delicti. This is the last and final chapter of Road to Redemption, the interviews.
So what we're going to do in this episode, you are going to hear from Casey Keaton and Sarah Romano, which is Rocky's lawyer and investigator. And then you are going to hear the interview with Rocky himself, which has presented a few challenges. We've never spoken to someone in prison before, so we actually had to get together because you can't three-way call. And so this is the first time we've recorded in person since probably 2 years ago. So if it sounds different, just bear with us.
We're both vaccinated, by the way.
Yes, we are. Also, apologies for last week. You probably noticed we did not have an episode. If you are in our Facebook group, you will have seen why. Our Zoom meeting actually got hacked. I don't know if y'all have heard about that happening on the news since COVID. It's a thing, and it happened to us. Hardcore, legitimately hacked, tried to kick the person out, didn't work because he was just in there, and he ruined the interview, and so we had to skip. So we apologize.
But next week, do know that we are going to bring you another new chapter series in Sweet Home, Alabama. So right now, we are going to kick it over to our interview with Sarah and Casey, and then stay tuned after the break, because then you'll be able to hear Rocky.
And before we do that, just a reminder, we are doing the letter campaign. We have been getting letters in the mail. We're super, super excited about that. We have the templates online if you need it, or you can write your own. Some people have handwritten them. Some people have typed them. Whatever floats your boat is fine with us. You can send them to P.O. Box 89, Chelsea, Alabama, 35043, or you can email it and we'll print it for you, as long as you can kind of get like an electronic signature on there. If you want, you can email us. Let us know you want a letter. We will print it out, self-addressed, stamped, send it to you. That way, all you have to do is sign it and send it back to us. So that's an option too. But we want to get as many letters as possible.
And one last and final thing, we do want to thank our most recent Patreon supporters, Shannon, Caitlin, Erica, and Amy. Thank you guys so much for becoming Patreon supporters. You should have already received all of your little goodies in the mail. Don't forget, everyone, go to patreon.com/Corpus Delicti for all those bonus episodes, videos, and behind the scenes.
But we're going to go ahead and end it here so you guys can hear these interviews. So you will not hear our voices after that again. So we hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for sticking along with us on the ride. Can you just introduce yourselves, tell us your name, a little bit of background, how you came into this case and what you do on this case today?
My name is Casey Keaton. I'm an attorney with the Federal Defender's Office in the Middle District of Alabama. I work in what is referred to as the Capital Habeas Unit, which represents people who are on death row in Alabama through their federal appeals process.
Hi, I'm Sarah Romano. I am an investigator at the Federal Defender's Office. My background is that I'm a clinical social worker, and I've worked on Rocky's case since it came into our office.
So our listeners have heard all about Rocky's story from start to finish about this case and the situation that's going on. And thank you so much for coming on our show and being able to speak to us. We really do appreciate it. One of the things that we found interesting is the weapon. Now, did the killer have the weapon on them upon arriving at the house, or was it something that they picked up inside the house?
Or do we even know?
We don't know, honestly, because obviously there were two people there besides the perpetrator in this instance, Mrs. Tucker and Mrs. Dutton. Mrs. Dutton obviously never sees anything that actually happens in the little entryway of the home. Other than, because she gets back in bed after she sees Mrs. Tucker going to the door. And we don't really hear anything from Mrs. Tucker, during the altercation other than what Mrs. Dutton provides to us. So, it's just as likely that it could have been something sitting right by her door or, by the doorway as it is for somebody to have actually brought the weapon there.
So just a follow-up question to that, the wound that she had on her left chest area, probably assumably below the clavicle, the one that pierced her heart and her lung, it seemed to be, or it was 6 inches below her shoulder. The wound was no more than an inch long. I think that was the consistent with all of them, and this is pure speculation on my side, that almost sounds like a pocket knife to me. But that
Do they know what type of, are they sure it was a knife or what kind or anything?
No. No, there's no, that, in either of the people that they ever arrested for this. So there really wasn't like an exploration of anything other than that it was a sharp instrument, potentially a knife.
And just to hit home on that point, when they did talk to Rocky and they did narrow in on him as a suspect, they did not find a weapon that matched those wounds inside his residence.
No. And I will say, one thing that I think is the difference between kind of this habeas work is our work is a look back. And
right.
Our ability to kind of ascertain things is limited by a record that in this case, we're getting and trying to compile things 10 plus years after the fact.
So speaking of Miss Dutton, this is one of the biggest questions that I have. Did she ever say, yes, it was Rocky, yes, it was this person?
And she is not the one who ever gave a physical description of him. It was her cousin, Mrs. Tucker, who did give a physical description 3 separate times. But Mrs. Dutton did testify, but she never pointed to Rocky. And in fact, in a later interview with Mrs. Dutton, with some people working on his earlier post-conviction case, she actually mentions that she and her cousin were on the front porch and saw the neighbor, Mr. Rocky, earlier that same day, and that they waved at one another, and that her cousin told her, that's my neighbor, that he's come over here before.
And so definitely they knew him. He knew her. It is established they knew each other.
Yes.
That is the biggest thing in this case to me is, I've told Jen this 100 times, Miss Tucker is gasping for air. She's been stabbed partially in the lung. They said she's struggling to get these words out, but she takes the time to describe the attacker when she could have just said, Rocky.
Right across the street.
Why wouldn't you just do that? That's the main thing for me where I'm like, okay.
It would have been less painful, less,
less questionable. Don't you want to catch them?
Yeah, I mean, that to me just blows my mind. And so when her cousin, Miss Dutton, hears her answer the door or is talking to this perpetrator and the perpetrator comes in, she never hears the word Rocky.
The other side of that kind of, again, that we know that the person that came to that door told the person that that they'd been in a car accident, that they needed to use the phone to contact their family. I mean, why somebody would even open the door when you know that person supposedly lives across the street?
Like your family's,
why didn't he just
behind you?
If it was Rocky, why didn't he just go to his house? It makes zero sense.
And if he was injured, he said he was bleeding. Did they find blood on the sidewalk, the stoop, or inside the house from the perpetrator?
They list nothing about that in the records.
Nope.
So do we think that there was actually an injury that just kind of went wrong, or do we think that it was just a farce to get into the house?
Well, I believe Mrs. Tucker describes at one point that there was blood on the shirt.
Right.
That whoever was at the door had blood on their shirt. So we believe she at least saw something that she believed to be blood.
So if it was blood on the shirt, was anyone, because we've got two people who end up being arrested in this case, did either one of them have injuries?
We know that Rocky did not once he was arrested. But, I can acknowledge, like, he wasn't arrested until over a month later from the time of the crime. Mr. Ballantyne, I'm going to be honest, I don't recall seeing any mention of injuries listed in his arrest report.
Was there any evidence, any actual evidence? Jen talked about the blood. We know that there was that palm print, which did not match Rocky. And then there were some footprints outside.
Again, not that we can see in the record that we have.
Right. Okay.
And not that anybody ever testified to.
We do know one thing that was evidence, but we were unable to get it at all because he didn't have any ability to subpoena records once we got the case. One of the things was like a phone call. And so we never got the records of where the phone call went to.
Oh, the phone call from the house, from Miss Tucker's house.
Yep.
That would be very telling.
Right. But we tried to get him every which way but loose, but he didn't have any rights to subpoena any records. And so we were unable to get those.
So we don't know anything about the footprints. We don't know what size they were, anything like that.
Or if they took pictures.
Yeah.
Just a note on a policeman's.
That seems like a very large oversight. So Cool Breeze, when he is originally charged, he's charged with murder. Rocky is charged with capital murder. What's the difference and why might that be?
The difference is the range of punishment available. Straight murder in the state of Alabama could carry up to a potential life sentence, whereas capital can carry up to a sentence of death. Well, really, ultimately, only two options for a capital murder offense is life without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. So that's the difference. Now, in terms of the reason for the charging difference, it's up to it's prosecutorial discretion. I think there probably are a lot of things that play into it that we know play into it. Somebody's social level can play into it. There's a big difference between the Ballantyne family and Mr. Myers within Decatur. Mr. Myers lives on the wrong side of the tracks in an area, that is described by his own lawyer as the pit of hell. And Mr. Ballantyne lives in a nicer area with a family who has an extended history in the Decatur area. Mr. Myers has been in Decatur for a total of a year with no real family connections. I think that there's definitely a probability of that. And we see it play out even today in choices made, when people are charged, that somebody who has a certain social status may get the benefit of the doubt, and you don't see any charges until it's gone through a grand jury. Whereas, people of a lower social standing, people without money, are arrested as soon as something happens. That's kind of just the unfortunate circumstance that we see play out over and over again in the criminal justice system is the haves and the have-nots, and they get a different level of justice.
My favorite question on here, and if you can't answer it, that's okay. And this, I will tell you, this question came from Tracy, and I was like, this is a great question. But again, if you can't answer it, that's fine. In your professional opinion, did the police do their job correctly? Was this case handled the way it should have been as far as gathering evidence, preserving evidence? Was it a thorough investigation?
I will say two answers to that question. One is what we see in the record indicates that there were a lot of dropped balls in this case. A lot of things not followed up on, and a lot of things not preserved in the proper way. Sadly, that's not that different than a lot of cases that we have seen over the time I've been with the Federal Defender's Office. And there's 100 reasons for that. It's not necessarily all like bad police officers or anything like that. Sometimes that's the difference between funds and training. The other part to that is we know, based on things that we have been able to uncover, that there were things that were done inappropriately in an intentional way. So I think those two things are at play, is that there were some dropped balls. But we also believe that there were some intentional malfeasance in this case.
Are you able to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'm glad to talk about that. And some of the documents are, again, available online where we kind of go through that. But I will also say, the defense investigator at the time of trial, who we've met with, who we've talked with, is a former police officer from Decatur, had a lot of problems with how this case was investigated, and has talked at great length with us about problems that he saw even at the time. So that's, our answer is through a window of a look back of a lot of years and not a complete case file. But that's, a person who was looking at it at the time who had a lot of problems. In terms of things that we know were intentionally done, from our conversations with one of the witnesses at trial, Marzell Ewing, we know, and we found record proof that he was arrested and picked up for a robbery charge. And when he was brought in and he changed, he testified provided a statement implicating Rocky, and he walked away and was never charged with that car robbery.
So, speaking of that, why did the police never obtain a warrant for the crack house?
That is a great question.
Fits right in.
And again, that's crazy to me, how you would have somebody bring you what is essentially becomes key evidence.
VCR?
Using that term loosely, but this key evidence in this murder case, and you let somebody bring it to you in the parking lot of the police.
In a van.
In a garbage bag.
On that topic, do we know it's the same VCR? Have they proven that? I mean, how sure of this numbers? VCR are we?
Yes, the serial number to that VCR that was located matched the paperwork on, and this is 1991, when VCRs were more expensive and people actually took them to repair shops, a repair shop ID receipt, and it had the serial number on it, which matched the one that was brought to the police.
So we know it's the VCR, but I mean, that the VCR seems like the crux of the case, so to speak. That's what Rocky, and I guess Cool Breeze for that matter, what they both were arrested on. But there's nothing, I don't know, it just seems like there's no prints on it. There's no, according to Rocky, it's in this alley where things are known to be dropped. And I mean, how is that enough?
Well, some of the witnesses mentioned that actually when the detectives came and talked to them, they said that Rocky's fingerprints were actually on the VCR, which was not true.
So they said that to the police said that to the people that they were talking to.
Yes.
So
Why
perhaps planting an idea in their head.
Yes.
Why would they fabricate that? Was it a strategy move to manipulate witnesses?
Well, that happens a lot.
But to make people feel comfortable that they're identifying the right person.
It's a bait and switch.
Yeah.
But then they're going to say, oh, well, if I don't say something, they're saying Rocky did it, so I better say that Rocky did it. They've got prints on him. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's interesting.
So once the police have Rocky, they take him into interrogation. Was it not recorded? And what are your thoughts about that? Why wasn't it recorded? Because we're talking about the 90s. Wasn't that prevalent during that time?
No.
And again, even now, that's not necessarily traditional at all places to record.
It's not. I don't think, I have very few clients who have any recorded interrogation.
Interesting.
I was under the impression, albeit thank you Dateline, that all the interrogations are recorded. Can you ask as someone who is being brought in to be questioned by the police, hey, I want this recorded? Is it in your best interest?
I never think it should be recorded.
Interesting.
It's kind of a weird place to be at. Like, my preference would be for anybody arrested to say, I'm not going to talk to you without a lawyer. So.
Right.
That's the big thing. Like, the first thing you need to do is say, I want an attorney right now.
And never say another word.
So, okay, on that note, that's a good segue because at one point there was some debate. It sounds like maybe in one of Rocky's appeals, or maybe you can help me understand what was going on, but where they talked about how he invoked the Fifth Amendment, but he was still questioned. Is that what happened? Or there was some question about his right to remain silent.
I'm thinking that where you're referring to is he was actually, and one thing is that Rocky had a prior arrest for like stealing a radio out of a car. I think that was what it was. And so what they did was he was picked up on a probation violation, that they were allowed to talk to him as to that case. But if they went beyond that, he could invoke his right to counsel. I think that one of the original kind of issues and arguments that was made at trial, and then I think again in the direct appeal, was that it was, that they did this inappropriately, that he really had, this probation violation was to just get him in there and try to wring a confession out of somebody.
Okay.
So Rocky is pinged for this. He's taken in, he's questioned, he goes through the jury process. So let's pause on the jury for just a little bit. The makeup of the jury is being brought into question. Here we have Decatur. It is a stone throw away from my hometown. So I grew up in Florence, Alabama, which is literally the tri-state area where you have Muscle Shoals, Killen, Decatur. And I've been to Decatur, and knowing the diversity there, I firsthand have seen the diversity. It seems very convenient for the prosecution, if you will, that jury was mostly white, because that is not the dominant population in Decatur. It is diverse, it's mixed, it has a collection of heritages.
On that same note, not only was it, I believe, 11 white jurors out of 12, but that there were some questions even during jury selection about, one of them said, they were asked, if you had a statement from a police officer and a witness, who would you be more inclined to believe? And they said the police officer, flat out. I would believe the police officer over the witness. And there were just lots of very certain answers from the jury that you would think they should probably strike them, but they didn't.
Well, I think a couple of things. I think, the jury diversity is not a reflection of Decatur. I think that's absolutely true. To have 11 white people and one African American in a town where I think white people at the time, I think their numbers were around 60% white and 40% African American or Hispanic, somebody not identifying as white. So your jury should have looked a lot more like that. So you have this, black man on trial for the murder of a white woman, and he's looking at 11 white people in that jury box and one young black man.
Is that okay? So I was curious because everything says 11 out of 12. So I was curious about the 12th. In the clemency video that you guys created, one of the jurors is in there, and she mentions that a lot of people came into the deliberation room, or forget the deliberation room, they came into the court already having their mind made up. What do you know kind of what she saw that made her say that, or what she heard that made her say that?
Well, we know from not just her, but from another juror that we've spoken to, that when they went into deliberations, that there were at least 3 that wanted to vote not guilty. But from her and, from the other juror, there was definitely a suggestion that by comments, et cetera, during smaller conversations, that there was a feel that people already kind of presumed that, they were just there as a formality, that whoever was brought in was going to be guilty.
Well, you have a lot of people going in at that time who really do trust that the police in that area. There is a huge trust of police, of the military. You're talking about, Huntsville, who has military bases, and it's a Redstone Arsenal. So there is that deep-rooted pride up in North Alabama specific to this. And both my parents were military, and there is a huge population and a huge community as it comes to that. So when you have that, you're raised, you trust the police. They say it's green, it's green. If they say the light was red, you write your ticket and you pay your fine. There's not much room for pushing back, if you will. So I can completely see it where you're going into this, and if the police say, who are you going to trust, me or the witness? A lot of people think that if they're sitting in the defendant's chair, there's a reason why
Right.
they're there.
Yes.
Something happened. But what a lot of people don't get is that people are wrongfully convicted so much and so many times. And unfortunately, it did happen to Rocky. And now he's convicted. He's guilty. Now his previous lawyer, not you, Casey, but the lawyer before, drops a ball the size of a hot air balloon. I mean, let's just be honest here. From reading everything, it sounds like he just walked away.
Yeah. How is that not just an automatic redo? How is that? How can your attorney drop you, not inform you, gets in trouble for it, gets reprimanded for it, but they're like, sorry, Rocky. How is that not an automatic redo the whole thing?
Is it because that he's in charge of his own defense?
And even now, this is still true. You do not have right to counsel past your direct appeals.
What?
So
So I'm on death row. I have no right to counsel after that last appeal, but I don't feel like I got my last appeal because
But yeah, he dropped it, but
my lawyer walked away.
Right?
Well, and this is kind of this probably goes way further down a rabbit trail, but essentially there are 9 court opportunities for somebody convicted really of any offense. If you're convicted of a felony, you have 9 areas that you can go through. You have your trial and your direct appeal, and that goes circuit. In Alabama, it goes circuit court to the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals to the Alabama Supreme Court and to the Supreme Court. That's kind of your line of appeals. But when you do that kind of appeal, it's a record-based appeal. So it has, whatever you're arguing about that went wrong, the courts have to be able to see it on the record. And so then you have a right to what's called in Alabama, it's called a Rule 32 post-conviction proceeding. And that's your opportunity to go outside the record. So if you learned that a juror was having sex with one of the witnesses, that would be your opportunity to raise it. And so once you start that level, which is bizarrely, you go back to the same circuit court that convicted you. So you go back to that same court.
Do you get the same judge?
Yes. If that judge is still there, you're going to have that same judge. But you don't have a right to counsel once you're there. So once you've gone through that direct appeal, which is record-based, kind of bizarrely, once you have the opportunity to actually do investigation outside of the record, you lose the ability to have it pointed to you.
When did his lawyer walk away? At what point in that process?
He left kind of anything during the appeal from that Rule 32 hearing. He didn't get a hearing.
So when he was no longer obligated to be counsel.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I would say when Rocky no longer had right to counsel, Mr. Schwartz was obligated and had made had agreed and accepted to represent Mr. Myers. And in fact, the letter in which he, kind of cemented his agreement with the American Bar Association's Death Penalty Project, agreed, I'm agreeing to take Mr. Myers' case, and I will represent him from his Rule 32 hearing until he is out of court through his federal appeals.
Okay, and that's where the whole, I don't know if it's the right term, but where the whole reprimand came in, because I know he did get, I guess, a slap on the wrist for it.
Yes, it was a public reprimand. So he was,
okay.
It showed up in the Tennessee Bar Journal. So-and-so got a public reprimand, and that's it.
The other big thing that happens in the trial in the court is the jury comes back, says he's guilty, but we're recommending life. Judge comes in and overrides that. That is now illegal, right? Here?
It is now illegal.
So how could it not be retroactive, and why is that?
Originally, when they passed the law doing away with judicial override, there was a discussion about whether or not to make it retroactive. And there was a push by some of the people in the legislature to not make it retroactive because there was a concern about how much it might cost. So that the financial cost potentially, which is kind of a legal fiction, in my opinion, because ultimately, if they have decided that it was retroactive and anybody who got a death sentence because of a judicial override is now simply sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, there would have been no cost. You would not have had to have new sentencing hearings. You could have just given everybody what the jury believed they should have.
Right. Now we say we want Kay Ivey to come in. I believe you had said, and I'm going to take a stab at who I think this is, that only one other person has had their sentence commuted.
Yes.
Was it Judith Neely?
Yes.
Okay. So here's where things get here. We've covered Judith Neely in depth twice, actually.
Listen to it.
And for someone to put Drano and Liquid Plumber and a little girl to get commuted to get to spend the rest of her life with a balcony or a patio connected to her little jail cell, how is that even comparable?
Surely, okay, but surely that means there's hope, right?
Well,
right?
There's always hope.
I mean, it's Judith Neely. I mean, she admitted to all this, and there was evidence, and there were people, like, how?
There was without a doubt on hers, but with his, we don't have any evidence. There is no evidence.
The reason that the governor commuted her sentence was it was his last day in the office, and he commuted it, right? I'm sure you know this, because we shouldn't be killing women in Alabama.
We shouldn't be killing innocent people either.
Amen, sister.
No kidding.
Amen, sister. So we get very, like, when we made that connection, because I was like, it says here that it was on the governor's last day in office and it was a woman. I was like, that's Judith freaking Neely.
And yet we have this innocent man who is super nice, super sweet. I mean, he's innocent from the get-go. And the more you hear his story and the more you live it when you listen to it, and all the details that Lindsay and I have gone through on this, it's really hard to believe without a shadow of a doubt. And that's why we definitely have our Facebook group open. If you guys believe differently, please, let's start that conversation. But, what happens now? So we have the ACLU petition.
Well, right now we're continuing, Right now, we're continuing to let that grow, as much as we can, because we don't have an execution date. And I don't know how familiar you are with. In 2018, Alabama passed a law changing, or at least allowing as an option, nitrogen hypoxia as your method of execution instead of lethal injection. And so Rocky is one of the people who elected that if I'm executed, I would rather it be nitrogen hypoxia. So currently, Alabama does not have a protocol to execute people using nitrogen hypoxia. So any of those people that made that election, they really can't move for an execution date right now.
Which is strategic on their end.
Yeah. Ultimately, once that happens, once they have a protocol to execute people that way, then the process that happens is the Attorney General's office asks the Alabama Supreme Court to set a date, maybe litigation back and forth. And then if they set it from whenever the order comes down from the Alabama Supreme Court, it has to be at least 30 days out.
And so if he elected that, do they have to stick to it? That was his election. They can't try to force him into whatever other method.
As of right now, that would have to be the case. Now, the difference would be if the statutes change. I mean, there would be additional litigation about that. I mean, there just would be.
So now, is there a timeline to have those procedures done? Is there?
Nope.
It's sitting lame duck somewhere in Congress or in the House.
No, it's the DOC has to figure it out. It's on them to figure out how to use the new protocol. They expected to follow. Oklahoma was doing that too, but Oklahoma hasn't figured it out yet. And I think they've given up on it. Is that right, Casey?
There's definitely been like kind of a push to go backwards a little bit in Oklahoma and moving away. I think there's a few problems with the idea of nitrogen hypoxia. I think.
What is it? I don't
it's gas. It's gas chamber, essentially.
Oh. Okay.
So it's, stealing all of somebody's air.
Oh. Wow. Okay.
So I think there's kind of a cringe factor.
Sure.
That some places kind of deal with in terms of that. But also like managing that in terms of how that could even be accomplished.
Right.
Is what some people in Oklahoma that have been dealing with the protocol and trying to put one together have indicated that they've had a real difficulty figuring out how you could even implement that safely. And by safely, that means like everybody else involved, as opposed to obviously the person they're trying to kill.
So let's really hope Oklahoma stumbles their feet on this.
That's
at least for Rocky's sake.
Yeah, that they can't figure it out. Can Kay Ivey completely just pardon him?
No.
No?
And that's actually the Judith Ann Neely law that came out because, when she was granted clemency, there wasn't a clear process. And so she has life with the possibility of parole. And the legislature was like, can't have this again. So they passed the Judith Ann Neely law.
She's still messing everybody up.
If the governor grants clemency, all that they can give is life without the possibility of parole.
Okay, so full disclosure, that is the best he can get right now.
At this point.
Wow. Okay, so what would it take
to get him out of the prison?
For somebody to say there's so much wrong here?
I mean, what
would have to happen?
The laws would have to be changed because he's not been able to have any of a hearing on any of the merits of his case, because when Earl Shorts dropped his case, he's time barred from bringing things into court.
Wow.
So there is zero hope without a law being changed for him to be able to walk out of that prison. The best thing that we can do is hope for life in prison at this point.
Without parole.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
I get it in the Judith case. I get that.
Yeah, but you've got to have some allowance for, stuff like this,
Well, but keeping in mind, Judith has an opportunity to get out someday.
Well, exactly. Well, because we wrote letters. We had our listeners write letters we were like, please don't let this woman out. She's already had her mercy. She's already received mercy. Oh my gosh, that's maddening. That's absolutely maddening. So in order to get Kay Ivey to say, okay, fine, life it is. What do you think is needed? What do you think has to happen? What can we do, knowing that there are thousands of people listening to this right now? What can we do?
I think that Governor Ivey has very clearly indicated in prior situations where she's been asked to grant clemency, kind of her response has been that the people of Alabama want, let me rewind. I think there's a couple of responses that she has made. One, she has plainly said before, like, well, I'm just following what the jury wanted.
Well, are you? Because
Not here, exactly. Like
Right.
here, not true. The jury wanted life without the possibility of parole. And so in other cases where it has been a judicial override, you've also seen governors of Alabama say, well, this is the people of Alabama want, the death penalty, and the people of Alabama believe this is justice. And Governor Ivey has actually specifically reflected that when she has gotten requests for clemency and petitions, et cetera, that they've been from people in other places, like people from Europe or whatever, that it's not the people of Alabama speaking.
okay.
That's the thing that I would love more than anything,
Mhm.
to figure out and tap in to the people of Alabama.
Okay.
Yep.
We are always glad, and that's one thing that Sarah and I have talked in different places across the country about Rocky's case. I'm always willing to talk about his case. I think one thing that happens sometimes for us on the news side is they're looking for like a hook of something that's happening now, like that's going to happen in X time. We the last time we probably got bigger news coverage outside, the Nation did the article, but we have one here. The Montgomery Advertiser did a big spread on it, but it was really geared towards like a whole thing that we put on, which we did a viewing of our clemency video at a local theater, and then had like a panel of faith leaders talking about the role of faith leaders in regard to the criminal justice system. Two things. One is, I think, like, the hard thing for us has been to kind of tie into people like that and show them a reason to talk about the case. And they also, kind of want something specifically to do. And that's hard for us right now because we're in the position of, we haven't asked for clemency yet because we are kind of continuing to try to grow that base and, that population of people that are supportive of it, and putting together the best clemency package that we can, which includes video, which includes letters that we've tried to gather from people for a few years now, because we did have a prior date that kind of spurred a lot of fast collection of items.
Well, we are more than happy to support the cause and to support Rocky in this. And I do have some of the final questions because I think we've gone through all of ours, unless Lindsay, you have. Okay.
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. So my question is the same to Casey as it will be to Sarah. But Sarah, you first, working on this case and knowing Rocky, meeting Rocky, talking to him, what does all this mean to you?
So actually what it means to me is that because Rocky's was one of the first cases that I worked on, and what matters to me is that I want Rocky to know and his family to know that he matters, and we are going to fight for him all the way through this, because I do believe it's an injustice, obviously, because I believe that he didn't commit the crime, and he was also screwed by the system, like, number one, that it was a jury override. Number two, that his attorney dropped his case, and because of my background as a clinical social worker, I 100% believe that Rocky is intellectually disabled. And early on in my career, because like I said, this was one of the first cases I worked on, and when we found documents in New Jersey that showed that he was ID, I was new to this work, and I was like, oh, and we celebrated with one of the attorneys that was on the case back then, and with two people who helped us find those documents. We were like jumping up and down, crying, because we were like, oh, we've got these documents, so he won't be executed. And what I know now is that unfortunately the law doesn't quite work that way, but here's what I do want to say, because I want you to know that Rocky is an amazing man. I love Rocky. I love his family because I've worked with them for so long. When Casey and I wanted to do a clemency request to the governor, Rocky was like, no, I'm not begging anybody for my life. And I said, and so Casey and I are like, okay, well, you don't have to beg for your life because we're going to do it for you. And then we also said, Rocky, you have a lot of issues in your case that could potentially help others, in the, coming forward. And he said, well, since you're going to beg, I'll let you guys beg, but it's more important to me to make a difference in this system for people like me. And again, like I said, he's just a really nice and sweet guy. And I want you guys to know that about him. For me, I think in order for us to change the system, we have to bring the person to the table so that people can see, why this is unjust and why we need to change the criminal justice system.
Casey, same question. What does this case mean to you?
I think the thing that stands out about Rocky's case in some ways is who Rocky is as a person. He is somebody who, even on his bad days, and he has those in prison, where he gets down and sad and frustrated, even on those days, like he is still kind and caring about other people and what's going on with them. He with his church group at home, and every Sunday, like, he continues to do, and he loves to sing, and he enjoys that. But it's also about like helping take care of those other people that are his brothers. So who he is so important, and it's a standout. But also the fact that in Rocky's case, there are so many things that went wrong. We see racism, not just in the jury selection and the people that sat on that jury that Sarah and I talked to, but we see it in who his defense counsel was, things that his defense counsel said at that trial, where he pointed to his own client and said, these are other people that live. I don't even want to talk to you, jury. I feel like I'm going to have to spray the whole room down with Lysol once you see some of these people that come in. Like that's the person who's supposed to be standing up for him, who's talking about like, wow, the only people that live in this area are drug addicts and prostitutes, not like you good white people in that jury. So we've got the race issues. We've got the judicial override. We have what I believe is some police malfeasance and just kind of police work. And then, we have this intellectual disability, like a person who is cognitively impaired going through a system. And for the reasons we know from case law and experience, why that's a horrible thing and why there's, problems with that. But the thing is that all those things did happen in Rocky's case, but they happen a lot more than we want to think about. And I think what Sarah said, that the ability to talk about Rocky's case, to hear it, to let people have some kind of visceral experience of that is important, because I think that's the only way people that don't have regular interactions with the criminal justice system can ever really understand that there are parts of it that are just broken.
Well, Casey, Sarah, thank you so much for talking with us. Casey and Sarah themselves, advocates, and they were in the trenches and still are in the trenches with Rocky. And we just want to extend our, biggest thanks and that you are able to join us tonight and talk with us. We really appreciate it.
An incarcerated individual at Alabama Department of Corrections. You may start the conversation now.
Hello.
Hello. How are your day going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. I had church today and everything. I had a bad day, a couple days, but it did be good to go to church today. That's like a lot of times when I'm in here, and a lot of times, you be feeling sorry for yourself and all in your feelings, however folks want to say it, and I go through that in here. A lot of people don't believe that just because you in prison, especially on death row, they figure that you tough or whatever. No, I get sad too. I feel sorry for myself too. I get a little depressed too, and stuff like that. But today we went outside to go to church and stuff because they don't let the preachers and stuff in no more since COVID. So we all got to go outside. And then sometimes we had church inside, like when it's raining or something outside or something, it's real foggy and the time just expires. So they say, all right, y'all can have it inside, So, and then we have our own church. Well, we got our own church here, where it's just us, the brothers on, we call it life row instead of death row. We call it life row. And we go out there and have service. But I'm sorry for rambling.
No, that's okay.
It's just, when I got outside today, when I got around my church brothers and stuff, it was like everything that I was burdened with just washed away. I was out there dancing because, we do what we call a praise and worship service, and the people was out there playing the guitar and stuff, and we was singing, and I just go to dance like an Indian, stomping my feet, man, and I knocked my own hat off my head and everything, but it felt good, and I feel better, I feel pretty good. The day so far has been a pretty good day, I was talking to Tracy earlier, and she said her dad, they trying to get him in the hospital because he's sick and stuff, so that brought me down to a little peg and stuff, but all in all, it's been a pretty good day so far.
Well, good. Well, hopefully this will help make it even brighter because we want people to hear from you. We've talked to you a bit through this and said that we know the story. We have case documents, but who is Rocky? And this whole thing is a real person, a real family, a real man. And that's, hopefully from hearing from you today, we will be able to let people know, even more about the story that you can't get from court documents, just, you and your life. I'll let Jen kick off with the first question.
Hey, Rocky.
Okay.
So the first question we wanted to ask you was, how did you get that nickname Rocky?
Oh, my mom gave it to me. Well, no. She didn't give it to me, but she told me a while back that, because I asked her, I said, Mama, why y'all name me Rocky? We didn't name you that. That's just a nickname. And she said that I was hard-headed when I was a baby. I was always putting stuff in my mouth and doing things, and they'll pop me on my hand, and I'll go right back and do it again. So as she said, my dad's friends used to call me Rockhead, like you were just a hard-headed, rockhead boy. And Mommy didn't like that. They're like, stop calling my son Rockhead. So they switched it from Rockhead to Rocky. And so that's how I got that name, and I growed up with it. At one point, I didn't think anyone knew my name, my real name, My my Aunt Lori, she asked me, can I send you some money? I was in the county jail then, and I told her, yeah. I said, Aunt Lori, do you know my name? She's like, yeah, I know your name. Well, what is it? She said, Robin. I said, oh, okay, cool. But no one calls me that. My grandparents, my siblings. No, my dad used to call me a name that it never really stuck. He used to call me Benny, and I don't know where that comes from. I don't understand that at all, Benny. And so, but that's my name.
All right. So what was your life like growing up as a kid? And I know you came from a big family, so tell us a little bit about how you grew up.
As a child, I really can't remember much. I know I remember that me growing up in my days is different than when the kids growing up these days. You know, because I remember we used to go outside and catch bugs and build little clubhouses out of abandoned buildings, doors and stuff like that, you know. And back in those days, your parents would tell you, take your A outside, get out of the house, move. And we can go out and play and run around and come back when it gets dark or when the lights cut on. And kids can't do that nowadays, you know. It's so scary out there. And a lot of kids, they just sit around in the house and play games and stuff, and we didn't do that. You know, but you know, that was just a real childhood. But I growed up, you know, in a rough neighborhood and let's call it ghetto, you know, or whatever that is, you know, poor neighborhoods or whatever. I grew up in that type of environment with the alcohol and the bums and all them people like that. I grew up around that, and so I kind of gravitated to that as I got older. You know, it's always you do what you know. My grandmama said one time, you know, when my sister Christine wanted to move from New Jersey to Tacoma, Washington, when her husband was in the military. They was moving on a military base. And my grandma said, you keep your ass where it's known, you know. So, and I've always been that kind of way. You know, I always like to stay around home and just dealt with what I knew. I didn't know anything else. But, you know, living in Newark, New Jersey, when I moved from Newark, I moved to Orange, and that was better. You know, that was kind of like blue collar. Orange, New Jersey, but I still had that mentality of, you know, a tough kid from Newark, New Jersey and stuff. And I fought a lot with my hands and stuff like that there. You know, back in them days, we didn't use weapons. We used a stick or something like that. So you just ran. Just get out of Dodge, you know. So, and then growing up with my siblings and stuff like that, you know, was more of a, you know, family-oriented thing, you know, like my big brother, we used to play church, where we set up the kitchen chairs and stuff around the house and put something up there where he's like the preacher and stuff, and we sit in there and fake like we have in church, and he'll record us singing and all that good stuff, you know, just family stuff, and, you know, hanging out with my brothers and my dad, you know. I'm an oldies person when it comes to music, you know, because my dad put that stuff in me, Isaac Hayes and all that kind of stuff, you know. So I don't know, you know. It's just, I guess, normal for me. I just kind of grew up normal, you know. A lot of things that people talk and a lot of things when I was young and stuff like that about me not having a good education and not being able to do certain things. I didn't realize that. To be honest with you, I didn't know it. You know, I told my brother, I said, for real, y'all, I was like that for real. You know, and they were like, yeah. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize, you know, that I knew I had a problem with learning and stuff. That's why I hate school. You know, I can't stand school because it's embarrassing, you know, to be sitting there and everybody's getting it and you're not, you know. A short story, I know I've been rambling and I'm sorry, but one of the reasons why I dropped out of school is because I was at the beginning of school, you know, after the school year started up, I had to go to the blackboard and do a long division problem. And math, I can't do math at all. I can't math. I still count on my fingers. I still put lines on the paper like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, and then strike them off, and then add, then count what I got left, all that kind of stuff. I can't do math, but my teacher called me up to the blackboard to do a long division problem, and I couldn't do it. And while I was standing up there trying to solve the problem, and my classmates would give me the answers behind me, but I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. And I knew right then and there, I said, when I get out of this class, I'm not coming back. And I just started playing hooky from school, and I started liking it. So then I started cutting other classes. And next thing you know, I wasn't going up to the school, but for nothing, just going up there to hang out and stuff like that, and run for maturing officers. But, so I really don't remember a lot of that. Me not knowing this, me not knowing that. I know I don't know. I know I'm not a very, people's intelligent. People like, no, you ain't this, you ain't that. I know. Sure, make me feel good.
We know that your life dramatically changed when you received your death row sentence. But what other ways have you been able to keep your life, quote unquote, normal for you? And what are some of the struggles that you have?
My life changed just by being incarcerated. That's a life changing thing right there in itself. And I miss my family. And my family. My brother told me one time. He said everybody that raised us is dead. All my uncles, my parents, my grandparents, friends, whoever used to just whoop you because you did something wrong in the streets, everybody's dead, so. And I have grandkids that I don't know them, and I was telling my little niece one time, it was like, I got a son, and he's about to get married, and I'm finna be a great grandma and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, I don't even know my family. All these kids and stuff like that there, I don't even know them. So that's a huge change. And a lot of, I haven't never changed like with my religion and nothing like that because I was raised in the church. My mom, my grandfather was a preacher. He married all of us, Bishop Moses Smith from New Jersey. He married us, and Mommy and them kept us in church. And then I married a church girl. When I got married to my ex-wife, she's a church girl. That's just a question right there that it's just obvious. My life has changed dramatically. But then again, it was a lot of things on the streets and stuff that I should have changed. When I was out there. I tell people all the time, like I try to tell my son, work harder than that. When you get off work, you can't go to another job, And when you get time off, then you spend it with your wife and your kids and stuff. Then the next day, go back to work, So I wish I would have done that more, and I wish I can do that now.
You've told us before that there are some ways that your life has changed that you didn't expect and that are actually, I guess you would say in a situation like this, positive, if it could be positive. Tell us about that.
I think that, I had to grow up. It's like my brother told me one time, man, I don't see how you do it. You've been locked up there a long time. Ain't no way I can do it. I'll be in there using all kind of drugs, and I'll try to stay high where I don't have to deal with it and all that type of stuff. And it's just like, I tell people I really don't have no choice. I have to do this, and I have to stay strong. And I was talking about that earlier, people, they think that just because you're in prison that you got to be strong and you're on death row and you tough and all that. And I get in my feelings too. I feel I get depressed in here. I get sad, and I feel lonely, all that good stuff, and I just got to deal with it. I got to, what they say, man up and just, live to fight another day. And hopefully, and I appreciate a lot of people like you guys and my family. You know, my son, Leandrew, that's my rock right there. When sometimes he has to school me, you know, because sometimes one time I called him and I was so upset because, you know, people in my family that's doing drugs and stuff like that, they're not doing well with their life. And I kind of think, you know, maybe that's my fault, you know, because I used to do drugs and stuff. And I'm not out there, and I haven't been out there and stuff. And he was like, Daddy, the things we do is not your fault. You know, I'm grown. They're grown. They made a decision to do this and do that, and I made a decision to do this and do that. You know, and sometimes he has to school me, you know, and to lift my spirits up and to make me feel good or make me feel better, let's say. I just can't, you know, I've seen people in here commit suicide, you know, and I've seen people in here just so sad, crying all the time. And I can't do it. You know, I have done that. I've laid in this bed, you know, because I'm in my cell by myself, you know, and no one's in here with me. No one can see me and stuff like that. And I cry, you know, just at nighttime when I pray and stuff, and I just break down and start crying and boo-hooing and you know, because prison ain't for no one. I tell people all the time, this is not the spot. Prison ain't the spot, you know, so I try to tell people all the time, straighten up. You know, that's one of the reasons I started that when I was in the county jail. I kind of like seen the little kids coming in, and they was young, even though I was younger now. I'm almost 60 years old, but, you know, and I seen them, and I tell them, man, y'all stop doing this and stop doing. My first fight in the county jail was because I was trying to get a guy to stop selling weed, stop selling drugs, and then another guy came in and talked like, oh man, you got to make your money, you got to do this, man, just make your money, da da da. And I was on one side. I guess they said the devil on one side and the angel on the other side, you know. And that was my first fight in the county jail because of that, you know. Because I try to tell people and try to help them. This is not the spot, you know. I learned my lesson. I had a good wife out there. You know, she gave me beautiful children and everything. And just because I had a disability and stuff like that there, I didn't have to do drugs. I could have fought hard and stuff like that, you know, to make things better, you know, as much as I can. So I take the blame for that, too.
Can you describe for us a typical day on death row?
Oh, my God. Well, that is hard. Not hard to explain, but I'm just saying it's just hard to live like this because I'm in a small. I don't know what size this cell is, but it's not regulation size. That's one of the reasons why this building is condemned, and they're finna move us because the prisons that they build now, the cells are way bigger than these. I could stand up and just touch the walls with my arms and you're in here 24 hours, you know, and 23 hours. And sometimes, a lot of times, most of the times, we don't even go outside because they don't have the officers here, or maybe the weather is messed up. And then you're eating slop garbage food, and it's sometimes it's loud and noisy in here, and in the summertime it's unbearably hot. So it's horrible. I mean, it ain't. 'Cause I used to think when I was out that people got air conditioning in prison. Ain't no air conditioning here. You know, it's none at all. And it's hard, you know, some of these guys on drugs and stuff, and they go to screaming and stuff at nighttime if they tripping out or whatever, you know. It's not easy at all. A typical day on death row is not easy at all. You know, but I was talking to an officer today, you know, we were talking about some of these guys out here that just always stay in trouble. And I don't want to live like that, you know, because you can live really, really rough here too. The police would, you know, treat you real bad here and stuff like that. I get respect from the officers. You know, we talk, we laugh, you know, and these are the guys that they'll walk me around the corner and kill me, you know, execute me. These are the same guys on the execution team. You know, sometimes we act like friends. You know, we talk and laugh, and we talk about the family. You know, I had a female officer that worked here a long time ago. Me and her was like best friends, and that's how she treated me. She treated me like a friend. You know, she'd come in and let me tell you what this so and so daughter of mine did. You know, and a lot of other people didn't. They didn't like that because some of the officers, they'd be like, "You ain't telling them your business," and I'm like, "Really, man? That's not really her business. It ain't private. It's just a conversation and stuff like that." You know, so it can be rough here, and then I try to make it just as easy as I can because I don't want no trouble, and I've never been that type of person. You know, just to be like a big mouth, always starting trouble, picking on people, and I don't care nothing about authority and stuff like that there. You know, I've never been that type of person, and then I would be faking, or you have to pull that out of me. You know, you really have to do something to me to make me want to, you know, act a fool. And it's not worth it. You know, my life here is hard enough. You know, it is. Like I just said, I just had a couple of days where I was just in my bed, you know, just feeling sorry for myself and missing my family and missing my freedom and not being able to do whatever, you know, going to bed hungry, ain't got no money and stuff like that. It's not easy. It's hard, you know. The other day I ate a bowl of rice for dinner because I didn't have nothing else to eat. And the food, there was nothing else on the tray to eat. You know, I mixed some okras with. I love okra. And so we had okras and corn and rice and some other stuff, and I just put that stuff together like that and ate it, you know. So being in here isn't easy. People think it is, and it is for some people, but not for everyone. And it's rough. You know, I just got a haircut today. I couldn't even get in the shower and wash the hair off. I had to come here in this little bitty sink and wash this hair off my head so I won't get it on my bed. You know, and it's hard. It's really hard. I don't know what to tell you, you know, because sometimes I can tell people about this place and they be like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" And then sometimes it's cool because, like I said, we can go to church, and when we go to church, it ain't like, you know, they got security in there, and we go to church, they let all us in the church, 20-something people, us, inmates, and they lock the door. And we go in there and serve the Lord. We play music, we sing, we do the preaching and the dance and all that stuff. You know, they let us go outside when we can. You know, and you would think that, like, death row would be, you know, chains all around your waist and stuff. They don't do that here because this is a different place, you know, other than other death rows. They don't, it's just different. It's hard to explain. It really is.
There's thousands of people who have followed along with this story, whether, you know, when you talk about, I know you call her the makeup lady. She covered this story, yep. and now. So thousands and thousands of people have heard about your case, but what do you want people to know about your story and about you as a person? What do you want people to know coming out of this?
Well, first and foremost, I did not do what they said I did. I did not do that. I had a dear friend of mine ask me that the other day, you know, and she was like, "I'm just gonna ask, did you do this?" And it kind of put a knot in my stomach to even have to defend that, you know. And I just don't know how to even approach that, but say, "Hey, no, I didn't do it," you know. And I'm just not that type of person to do anything like that, you know, to anyone. And I am who I am, you know. I think that I'm a nice person. I think that I get along with just about anybody, you know. I love my family. You know, and I try to mold myself the way my mom wanted me to be. You know, my dad, not so much. My dad, he was like, "You got to be you got to be man," and all that stuff. Even though I am, but my mom, I think I'm more of my mother's son, than my dad. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't do this. I didn't kill anyone. I was a drug addict on drugs, and it really wasn't that serious. If as soon as I got locked up, I quit doing drugs. I forget what year was it, 90 or 91, whatever. As soon as I got locked up, I did no more drugs. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke cigarettes no more. I don't drink alcohol and all that stuff they have here, and I could get it easily. I just don't want it, and I've changed that way. And I pat myself on the back for that because I know that that's not easy to do.
Absolutely. And you know that we agree with you. We've been very clear. We basically consider you family now, and, we're on your side, and that's why we took this on, because it's important for people to know all of the things that happened, every bit of it. And, we want to thank you for actually taking the time to speak with us, because like we said, we know the story. We can find that information, but it's sometimes it's hard to separate, a story. It's not a story. It's your life. You're a person with a family, and and just it's important to know how, what you've been through, and that there's actually a human being behind all this.
Yeah.
You have 1 minute left.
There's a lot of times I feel that people don't understand that. People don't see that. They just looking at me like, this is what they say you've done, so I believe you've done it. And
Right.
And that's the hard part, because I know I didn't do it, and everybody wants to, nobody wants people to look at them like, you're a killer or you this or you that. You know what I'm saying? Everybody wants to be treated and be looked at as a good person. And I do too. I really do. This phone's going to hang up